In a small village in Daska, Pakistan, life seemed peaceful. People went about their daily routines without much disruption. But one day, everything changed. The calm of the village was shattered by a shocking discovery. A young woman, Zara, was found brutally murdered. Her body was dismembered and scattered in a horrifying way. The conspirators in Zara's murder included her mother-in-law, Sugran, who was also her biological maternal aunt, her sister-in-law, Yasmin, and a butcher named Naveed, who was brought in from Lahore. They lured Naveed into participating by offering him money and the promise of sending him to Italy. Together, they carried out the gruesome act by suffocating Zara with a pillow while she slept. Naveed was then called upon to dismember her body, after which they burned her face on a stove to hinder identification. The remains were divided into 5 bags. Later, Sugran, assisted by Yasmin and her grandson Abdullah, disposed of the bags in a drain in an attempt to cover up the horrific crime. This is the story of Zara. It is a story of jealousy, betrayal, and a tragic loss of life. As we uncover the details of her life and the events leading to her death, we will explore the dark motives behind this crime and its impact on her family and community. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our true crime stories. Your support means everything. Zara was a 30-year-old woman with dreams and responsibilities, like many others in her position. She was married to Qadir Ahmed, and together they had built a life abroad in Saudi Arabia. Qadir worked there to provide for his family, and Zara joined him to support his efforts. They had a young son, Muhammad Shafi, who was only 2 years old. Their little family seemed happy and full of hope for the future. Life, however, is never simple. Zara had returned to Pakistan just 15 days before her tragic death. She stayed at her in-laws' house in the small village of Kotli Miran in Daska. She was expecting her second child, which should have been a joyous time for her family. Zara's family described her as a kind and loving person who was focused on her family's well-being. Her mother passed away just 1 year after her marriage, leaving Zara deeply attached to her father. Her father, Shabir Ahmed, a former assistant sub-inspector in the police, always felt protective of his daughter. When she went back to her in-laws' home, he thought she would be safe among family. But Zara's time at her in-laws' home was not as peaceful as it seemed on the surface. There were hidden tensions and conflicts within the household. According to police, Sugran has 6 daughters and only 1 son, and she, as well as her 6 daughters, were jealous of Zara because she was living abroad with her husband who cared for her. She thought that her son had been taken away by her daughter-in-law, which led to fights and the continuous Cold War. Zara's disappearance was first noticed around November 10th, when her father, Shabir Ahmed, began calling her repeatedly, but her cell phone was switched off. Concerned, he visited her residence on November 12th, where her sister-in-law claimed Zara had left the house with jewelry and valuables, though her grandson, Shafi, was still at home. Suspicious of the vague responses from her in-laws and sensing something was terribly wrong, Shabir filed an FIR with Motra Police in Daska, nominating 5 individuals, including her mother-in-law, Sugran Bibi, in connection with Zara's disappearance. This marked the start of a tragic investigation that would uncover the dark secrets within Zara's family. In response to the situation, the police have obtained a 3-day physical remand of the suspects to facilitate further investigation. The police have obtained CCTV footage from various locations, including the purchase of the murder weapon, as the investigation into the brutal murder continues. Following the arrest of her mother-in-law and sister-in-law, authorities have also apprehended the sister-in-law's son and an alleged accomplice. During the investigation, Zara's in-laws were interrogated. Under pressure, the sister-in-law's son, Abdullah, made a shocking confession. He admitted that Zara had been murdered and the details of his confession were horrifying. According to Abdullah, Zara was first strangled to death. But the crime did not stop there. Her body was then dismembered into multiple parts. To further conceal her identity, they burned her face on a stove. The dismembered body parts were placed into 5 separate bags and disposed of in different locations, as if to erase any evidence of Zara's existence. The details of Abdullah's confession were both chilling and deeply disturbing. During the interrogation, Zara's mother-in-law, Sugra, revealed that Naveed had allegedly dismembered Zara's body. She further disclosed that he had transferred 10,000 rupees to her online, which was used to purchase a cleaver from the market for this purpose. As news of Zara's murder spread, it left the entire village in disbelief and grief. People who knew her described her as a kind and caring person who didn't deserve such a fate. Her family, especially her father and her brother, were left devastated. The question on everyone's mind was, why? What could have driven Zara's in-laws to commit such a horrifying crime? During questioning, Sugran admitted that she held a grudge against Zara. She accused Zara of bringing problems to the family and claimed she had used black magic to harm them. While these claims were baseless, they showed the depth of Sugran's hatred and her belief that Zara was a threat. Yasmin, on the other hand, appeared to have been a driving force behind the conspiracy. She had spread rumors about Zara's supposed involvement in witchcraft, convincing others in the household to support the crime. Naveed and Abdullah were recruited to carry out the physical act of murder under the direction of Sugran and Yasmin. The evidence collected from the crime scene further supported the police's case. Tools used in the dismemberment were found in the house, and forensic analysis confirmed that they were linked to the crime. Traces of blood matching Zara's DNA were also discovered, leaving no doubt about what had occurred. The disposal of Zara's body was another crucial part of the investigation. Abdullah led the police to the locations where the remains had been scattered. Under the cover of night, Sugran disposed of these bags by throwing them into different locations within a local sewage drain. This shocking discovery drew a large crowd of people who gathered to watch as rescue teams recovered the body parts after a lengthy search operation. The police uncovered deep-rooted jealousy within the family. Zara's life in Saudi Arabia with her husband seemed to have caused resentment, especially among Sugran Bibi and Yasmin. They envied her position as Qadir's wife and felt that Zara's presence overshadowed them within the family. Zara's return to Pakistan, pregnant with her second child, may have intensified these feelings. The police also discovered that Zara's husband, Qadir, had been largely absent from the situation. Living in Saudi Arabia, he was unaware of the growing tension between Zara and his family. His absence left Zara vulnerable and without support in the hostile environment of her in-laws' home. Zara's father, Shabir Ahmed, played a crucial role in ensuring the case was taken seriously. As a former assistant sub-inspector, he had the experience and determination to demand justice for his daughter. His suspicions about Zara's in-laws were critical in directing the investigation toward them. As the arrests were made public, the community reacted with shock and outrage. The idea that Zara's own in-laws had orchestrated such a brutal crime was incomprehensible to many. The police ensured that the suspects were charged with serious offenses, including murder and conspiracy. The case was now heading to court, where the evidence and confessions would be presented. The police filed charges of murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering against Sugran Bibi, Yasmin, Naveed, and Abdullah. The proceedings would now determine whether justice could be served for Zara's brutal murder. The initial court hearings were somber. The suspects appeared before the judge, and the prosecution presented the preliminary evidence. Abdullah's confession, the tools recovered from the crime scene, and forensic evidence were central to the case. Zara's father, Shabir Ahmad, stood as the primary voice demanding justice for his daughter. During the hearings, the defense lawyers argued that the confessions were made under duress and tried to downplay the roles of Sugran and Yasmin in the crime. They attempted to shift the blame primarily onto Abdullah and Naveed, portraying them as the ones responsible for the murder. However, the prosecution countered with evidence that showed the planning and coordination among all the accused. The court also heard emotional testimony from Shabir Ahmed. He described Zara's character and her tragic fate. His statements highlighted the betrayal she faced from those who were supposed to protect her. He spoke not only as a grieving father, but also as someone determined to ensure such acts would not go unpunished. The proceedings drew significant media attention. News outlets across Pakistan covered the case, with many focusing on the shocking nature of the crime and the involvement of Zara's in-laws. Zara's father, Shabir Ahmed, had his life changed forever after the murder. He became not only a grieving father, but also a guardian for Zara's 2-year-old son, Muhammad Shafi. The little boy, too young to understand the loss of his mother, clung to his grandfather for comfort. Shabir took on the responsibility of raising him, ensuring the child would grow up in a safe and loving environment. Zara's case is still an ongoing fight for justice. The court has been conducting hearings to examine the evidence and testimonies related to the case. As of now, no final verdict has been reached, and the judicial process continues to ensure justice for Zara Qadir. Her family, especially her father, Shabir Ahmed, remains committed to holding the perpetrators accountable. Through her story, we are reminded that every life matters and every effort to combat injustice counts. Zara's legacy lives on, not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but also in the fight for a better, more just world.